Welcome to the Leaders of Light podcast, a transformative space where spirituality meets personal growth. Each episode is designed to inspire, uplift, and empower you on a journey to inner peace and self-discovery. Through insightful conversations, practical tips, and powerful guidance from some of the most sought-after speakers of our time, we explore a wide range of topics, ranging from mindfulness and meditation to overcoming personal challenges and embracing your true potential. Whether you're seeking clarity, healing, or motivation, the Leaders of Light podcast is here to support you as you unlock the limitless power within. Tune in and let's begin this beautiful journey together. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with one of my absolute favorite relationship gurus who wants nothing but the best for the greater community. Her generosity and genuine love for her followers is expressed in her words, her actions, and the amazing insights she offers in all areas of her work. Dr. Abby Medcalf, PhD, is a relationship maven, psychologist, author, podcast host, and TEDx speaker who has helped thousands of people think differently so they can create connection, ease, and joy in their relationships, especially the one with yourself. With her unique background in both business and counseling, she brings a fresh, effective perspective to life's struggles using humor, research, and her direct, no-nonsense style. With over 35 years of experience, Abby is a recognized authority and sought-after speaker at organizations such as Google, Apple, AT&T, Kaiser, PG&E, American Airlines, and Chevron. She's been a featured expert on CBS and ABC News and has been a contributor to the New York Times, Women's Health, Philosophy Today, Fast Company, Success Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal. She's the author of the #1 best-selling book, Be Happily Married, Even If Your Partner Won't Do a Thing, as well as her newest release, Boundaries Made Easy, and the Boundaries Made Easy Workbook. She's also the host of the top-rated Relationships Made Easy podcast, now in over 180 countries. To learn more about Dr. Abby Medcalf, please check out the link included with this podcast. The title of this podcast, Know Your Worth, comes from one of Abby's amazing community love letters, where she expands on an intriguing experiment conducted by the Washington Post. Incidentally, if you're interested in receiving one of Abby's weekly love letters, filled with all kinds of insights, make sure you check out her website, abbymedcalf.com. Again, you'll find the link in the description. Let's begin by recapping the story. In 2007, Joshua Bell, an outstanding internationally acclaimed violinist, was asked to participate in a social experiment together with the Washington Post. The plan was to have him play his violin at the Metro Transit station in Washington, D.C., giving the impression he was just some guy trying to make a buck. He was somewhat disguised, wearing a baseball cap and daily casual attire. He played on a 300-year-old rare violin worth $3.5 million and performed just as he would at any of the renowned opera houses and prestigious venues around the world. The outcome? Instead of the huge crowds they anticipated would stop to listen once they heard the radiant sound of the violin and the virtuoso behind it, they were surprised to see only a handful of people actually stopping. Out of the 1,097 people that passed during the 43 minutes of Bell's performance, only 7 paused to listen. I would suspect that the few that did stop would never have imagined they were listening to one of the greatest violinists in the world. But instead, they probably thought, wow, this guy's good. He should look for a job at a restaurant or something like that. The other surprise was the $32.17 that Joshua Bell collected in donations during the 43 minutes of his performance, opposed to the $60,000 per hour he was making at the time. It's also interesting to note that 62% of the $32.17 made in donations came from one person who recognized him from one of his performances the night before. So, personally speaking, I watched a video of him, of that.
Yeah, that's a famous, yeah.
And I felt the eerie sensation of the silence after he performed the piece, because he's very passionate about it. Like,
oh yeah, he's in.
Any artist of that caliber would be, right? He's so passionate. He's not looking. He's not connecting with his audience at that time. He's connecting with his violin, his instrument, right? And then he looks up and it's like, or he finishes playing, and now there's silence after this engulfed experience.
People are not jumping to their feet.
Then you hear shuffle of feet and people walking, and like, as if he's, I don't know, a train passing by or something like that. Like it's so nothing, and there was an article, the article by Gene Weingarten, who published The Outcome of the Experiment. Joshua Bell said that when you play for ticket holders, you are already validated. I have no sense that I need to be accepted. I'm already accepted. Here, there is this thought: what if they don't like me? What if they resent my presence? Right? Sure. Which I thought, like, here is this guy who is absolutely phenomenal at what he does. And
been a virtuoso from about age 9. Yeah. So he's being recognized around the world. By the time he was 12, he was already like a lead violinist, and was crazy. I mean, he's a true virtuoso. And so, you have to remember that too. He spent his whole life being lauded and accepted and loved for this thing. And then he's in this moment of people don't care. Like, is this my worth? Because that's right.
Yeah, I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Yeah.
Like,
or I don't even know if it's that. I think it's more being accepted. I think about when I was on maternity leave each time. I remember this one woman talking to me the first time I was off, and I'm in the park with my son, and she's like, oh, she's just talking to me, and I blurt out, I have a regular job. I'm just on maternity leave. I'm going back. I'm doing, I started talking about my, jet set life like an idiot. Like, why on earth are you talking about? No one's talking about this. But I was feeling self-conscious, like that she just thought, because I was used to being in my, believe it or not, my other life, I was really something, that I was, private cars and planes and jets and first class everywhere. And I was really this person that constantly got this attention for how good I was at this job. And so it was, first of all, very hard to walk away from, but later. But second of all, whenever I was off, like on maternity leave, I would find myself, and it's when I did a lot of my work, like what is wrong with me? Why did I get overcome like that? Like, I love people. I love to chat. And here I was, like, all part of my ego. It just like, and anyway. It's the same kind of thing to me when I read the Bell story. I was like, we put a lot of our eggs in the basket of what we do often. And that's why a lot of stay-at-home moms feel like they're doing nothing.
They're doing a lot, because I was a stay-home dad, and it's no joke.
There you go. Stay-at-home parents feel like they're doing nothing. When you ask them, like, oh, what do you do? If you ask that question, they'll often say nothing. And I'm like,
and then they feel unworthy.
I'm like, you do nothing? You sit on the couch all day? Like, and then they'll say, well, no, I've got 3 kids, or I've got a kid, or I'm like, oh, you don't do nothing. Like, I get confused. But so now I don't ask that question anymore, by the way. I ask other questions, because when you ask, like, Vanessa Van Edwards, who's my girl crush, wrote the book Q and all those others. She's, this behaviorist for all this stuff. She talks about how when you ask someone what they do, really what you're asking is what you're worth. Like, are you, what are you worth? And instead, she has all these other questions. She says, what are you excited about right now? Is there anything you're working on that's really got you going? Is there anything in your life right now that you just can't stop talking about? Like these are great questions to when you meet someone,
yes.
right? To go deeper, then what do you do?
That's interesting. So do you think when somebody's asking, what do you do? Are they trying to
Yes.
value you? Are they trying
Yeah.
to like subconsciously, or are they maybe sometimes, consciously trying to say like, is this, you're trying to find out if this guy's a threat or person is a threat to you.
Or I don't even know a
they're-
threat. I think it's scary because I think they get worried that they won't make it, like aren't enough. Like what do people ask a lot after? What do you do? Where'd you go to school? Right. And
Yeah.
I've got quite a pedigree with where I went to school, but I never talk about it because it immediately pigeonholes me in a group where people might not really listen to me anymore. And so I don't talk about it. If you look on the podcast, if you look on my about page, it's not there because I really want people to listen. I'm not talking about because I'm some genius. I'm talking about this because there's geniuses above me. And I've tried this with clients for years, and this is what works. And it works in my own life. Like I'm your guide, not your guru. So I don't need to be some perfect whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and you have to get away from that. Freaking Real Housewives giving it relationship advice makes me crazy. Kim Kardashian talking about, I want to strangle people. Like, I have to really practice letting go. Yeah.
I feel your pain.
That's when I want to let go of that stuff. But that's exactly what people are doing. I don't know if they think they're a threat as much as they don't feel good enough. It's that self-worth again. Like, oh, everybody here went to Stanford. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know why I'm in the room. I've heard people say it. I literally have been with somebody in a room and someone said, did you go to Stanford? I'm like, no. I'm like, God, me either. I feel like I shouldn't even be here.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I went to Columbia, which I think is better, but let's not even go there. But I realized that's why I'm not intimidated. But here's somebody who went to a good school, by the way. We were talking and he was at University of Chicago. It's one of the best schools in the United States, but not Ivy. And Stanford's not even Ivy by our Ivy standards. I mean, give me a break. But you know what I mean? It's not one of the Ivy schools. It's just a really good school out here it's Ivy on the West Coast. But like this way that he was thinking, that's what he said to me. He goes, well, they're all Ivy Leaguers. And I go, Stanford's not Ivy League. And he was like, what? I said, your school's just as good, if not better, depending on what you went to school for. Like better than there. What are you talking about? He was just like, oh, but this is what goes through people's heads.
Yes. And there's so many factors. Like, you could have gone to a great school and had the crappiest teacher.
Yes.
Or maybe your teacher was doing something and wasn't delivering, right? And vice versa. You could have the crappiest school and have a really good teacher, right? Like everything is so, it's very subjective.
Yes.
And we're always trying to like pin people into this little box, which
that's what that question is though. So it's not to threaten people. I mean, it could obviously intimidate some people, but like that, but I don't know if he feels, and maybe that results in feeling a little threatened, but it's mostly people's low self-esteem, not walking in the room. My Gary, was in the Navy, so he didn't go to college. But he was a Navy nuke. He's at the top of it's one of the hardest programs to get into, along with, there's like 5 top military programs. Navy nukes are in the top 5.
Impressive.
Yeah. Navy nukes are in the top 5. So he knows he's smart. And he's also 6'4", he's at the top of the food chain, a white male of 6'4", very fit. So he has no issue when people talk about college or he's bragging about me. I'm like, shut up. Like, I don't like to talk about it. He has zero worries about his self-esteem when it comes to being in the room. Even though because someone will say, well, where'd you go to school? And he goes, I had the school of hard knocks, or he'll sort of joke around, he won't even say, I'm like, he was a Navy, or he'll say I was in the Navy. He has no need to like prove himself and he will stand with it. And it's beautiful to watch. I mean, I don't now being a white male of privilege, it's a little easier, but still all these things play a factor that are kind of amazing with how we see ourselves and what our sense of worth is.
Yeah, I've learned that in martial arts, like when you're so good that you can beat somebody up.
Yeah,
you're like, you don't fight. There's like I know very few black belts that actually get
Yeah.
into fights
No.
because you have this confidence that like what for?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there is no need. You see that a second like another level that you're going into. Like it's like
Uh-huh.
more like okay, like I don't need that, right? Like
Yeah.
this, it
I
doesn't
don't need to
define
prove
you.
myself. I've proved myself to me. I feel confident. I feel like I know who I am. It's one of the reasons I don't feel a need to list my schools. I don't have my degrees up on the wall anywhere. Like I don't, how many people sit here with their degrees behind them? I have a beautiful picture behind me, of life is beautiful. Like I have in that point in my life, there was a point in my life where I used to like to hang my degrees, I admit it, there was a point in my life on maternity leave when I'm off of work. I work, like an idiot, but I try to be kind to myself, at the time, that's where my ego was. And that's where my thinking was, which got me to here because I noticed it, thank God, and started to work on it. I was like, this is a problem. This is embarrassing. I was like cringing at myself. I thought, who am I? Because I certainly never, ever think anything about if someone says I'm a, janitor or a school nurse or I'm everyone's in high regard to me. Especially actually people who work that hard because I don't work that hard. I'm my mother, that's how I was raised. My mother was, I wasn't raised with money. Like you talk to everybody, you're kind to everyone. That's your job. And so make everyone feel welcome. Like that's what you do. That's it. So, but to do that to myself was very odd. It's like, why am I looking down on myself?
Yeah, and those are like old wounds that come out too, right?
Right.
But
exactly.
The other thing is the I had a question for you, by the way.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So this question was about let me tell you about the limiting belief that has play in this experiment. So limiting belief is my worth is a measure of how others see me. If they see me as good, I'm worthy. If they see me as bad or don't see me at all and ignore me, I'm unworthy. So I see the visual is you have this tipping scale, and you have approval and disapproval, and the more people approve of you, the more you feel worthy. And but what I say is that if you're giving weight to other people's opinion, you're saying your opinion of me matters, right? You're saying to, and we're talking strangers. We're talking if you go out in public, right? And you have a really good example of this. So I'm going to ask you the question: do you hold other people's opinion of you in high regards, including people you don't even know?
Do I personally? No. I care what others think, but I don't worry about it.
Right. And that is the rational answer. But then there's this less rational response, which is coming from another part of you, from this limiting belief that says my worth is a measure of how others see me, and therefore I hold other people's opinion of me in high regards.
Yeah.
And you shared a story. I'm going to remind you of the Texas story.
Oh, when I was on stage? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I gave this talk. I see, still hits me in the heart. I gave a talk and there was, I think 150 people in the room or something. I had looked up what the stats were when I wrote that. But there was something like 150, 300 people in the room. I don't remember the number. I think
it was 300.
It might have been 300.
179 replied to your.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I remember. Right. It was like about 180 people, because I always gave a survey after my talks. Like, how was it? What'd you like? What'd you not like? I'm always trying to improve. So I want feedback. And I get the people who led the conference took all those sheets. And then as I was on the plane home, I looked at right before I got on, I looked at this email that said that, oh, you had 179 responses or whatever it was from the people, which is high, by the way. Most people don't respond, don't fill out the form. So even that was fabulous. But then of all of them, there was 3, I think I remember, that all of them were like best ever. She should be the keynote next year. She was incredible. Best thing I've ever sat through. Best speaker ever. Like all of them were, I mean, off the charts. Like I had fives, everything was like top. And then there was 3 people who hated me. And it was clear that they personally hated me. Yes. Like it was clear that at least 2 of them were extremely racist. Yeah. And, I'm a New York Jew on stage in Texas. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, And
it's shocking when I heard that when I shouldn't be, but I
was not the cup of tea there. And one other person literally was like commenting on my body, and they were mean. They were like mean. They weren't feedback. Yeah. They were just they're critically mean.
Yes.
And but was that all was I just going, oh my God, 3 people who are obviously whatever, and I have 176 responses that are glowing, but I'm human. So I was focusing on those 3 and they were upsetting me. I remember having that funny, I call it the in trouble feeling, when you get that feeling in your pit of your stomach where it kind of drops out and you get upset. And I got over it pretty quickly, but it hits, when people are
like coming down from a high. You have this high from all this.
Felt really good.
And all of a sudden, boom. And it's like, what happened?
Yep. Yeah. I had 4 other speaking. I got hired for like 4 other gigs from that, like in the conference. People were like so impressed. And it is funny, that conference, I am keynoting this year in October. So it just so happens. It's just so funny. But but it's just such a weird, all of us, no matter what, can obviously get sucked in. But in general, when I walk around, no, I'm really not caught up. I care. I think about it, and somebody might say something mean or uncalled for, and obviously I think about it, but I do my best to get my brain off of it. But I do want to say it's natural to go there, which I talk about, a lot in my podcast.
That was my next point.
Yeah. Okay.
We talk about it in Be Happily Ever Married. Even if your partner won't do a thing, you talk about it in chapter 7.
Yep. Lizard brain.
You get into the technical part of it, right? And it's like the first time I heard that, I go, oh, this is such amazing information all in one spot here. And you're telling people, I know the boring part's going to be over. The science part, going to be over soon. And like thinking, Abby, this is like the jewels.
Exactly. I agree. A lot of people just start to roll their eyes up. But yeah, we know this from biological anthropologists. We know this from so much research that it is hardwired in us to care what others think. Because, if we're all in the clan, millions, even hundreds of thousands of years ago, and we're in the clan together, and you don't like me, and you're not positively regarding me, I'm going to die.
Okay.
I'm not just going to I'm going to die like in my head. I'm going to physically die. Yeah. Because no one's going to take care of me. I'm going to get probably thrown out of the clan, which means I will die within hours. Hours people lived outside the clans. Hours. You either died because you weren't allowed. I didn't know. You weren't allowed access to water or any of the sources that these people had, and you had nothing to defend yourself against all the animals and all the things that were very prevalent. So you would often die. They've figured this out within 16 hours. So you were going to die. So that is why social media has such a stranglehold on people, right? Because people are commenting and liking, and you go back and the notifications, it's all those little dopamine hits, and people get into it. But it's the same thing when you're speaking and someone doesn't like it, even when all those people do. We're immediately thinking, not consciously, but subconsciously, I'm gonna get thrown out of the clan. Yeah. Like they're gonna talk to other people, and those are gonna talk to other people, and then everybody's gonna think this, and then everyone's gonna hate me. Even though that's ridiculous.
I want to read you an excerpt from Chase Hughes, his book. Have you heard of Chase Hughes?
Of course.
Yeah. The 6-minute X-ray.
I don't remember this. Go ahead.
I've listened to that, and I haven't learned it yet. You would love this book, Abby. Really love it.
I haven't read it.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, so in a nutshell, he says what you just said and what you say in your book, Be Happily Married. He says a few hundred years ago, we had to continually worry a lot about being social. Let me get my glasses so
Yeah.
I'm not staggering here. The average tribe or group numbered about 70 to 150 people. And if you appear to be unstable, unpredictable, weak, or even antisocial in this small group, you stood the chance of being outcast by the group. This hurt your chances of having sex, passing our genes on to the next generation. So the survival, the carrots and sticks that you talk about also with Rick Hansen, which I met years ago.
Me too.
He's a super nice guy.
Amazing.
One of his workshops in Boulder, Colorado, many years ago. When I was writing I was asking for some advice about writing my book, right? I was 2.5 years into my book, thinking I was almost done. 4.5 years later, I finally published it.
Good job.
Yeah. So, anyways, he goes on to say, the brain in your head is no more evolved than it was a couple of 100,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's still running the exact same programs your ancestors did. The hard truth, however, is that we have no ability to go into our settings menu and delete or stop some of these programs from running in the background of every aspect in our life. So the conclusion is, due to our brain's programming, our reptilian brain is hypervigilant to any negative responses that show signs of disapproval. So the brain equates disapproval with the threat of survival.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And you said before, like, I'm only human. Like when you said, I started focusing on all the negative stuff, and I'm only human. And this is again awareness. Be aware of how your brain is producing that limiting belief that says you value other people's opinion, right? And why are you valuing it? Because it's your life is being threatened, right?
Well, that's what your subconscious thinks. So
Yes.
our jobs are to be mindful. So train our attention, which is the other thing we call mind. When I started in the mindfulness field, we called it training your attention, because I could not go to some executive and say, we're going to work on mindfulness 15 years ago. Forget it. But I could say, we're going to help you really train your attention so you're more productive, because that is the truth of it. And so that is what we need to do when those thoughts start to take, they will, because that's inevitable. You can't stop negative thoughts completely, but you can, and you should notice when they happen and very quickly respond to them. Challenge the thought, have a new thought, have a mantra, do something to your nervous system to shift it. It's like having a thing of Haagen-Dazs and just indulging when you have negative thoughts and ruminations over and over and you let them go. Everything is a habit of thought. So you have to change the habit. So if the habit becomes, I have a negative thought, I immediately catch it, I immediately dispute it and have a different way I think about something, right? This sucks at work. This is going to suck so bad. Okay, there's another obstacle, another chance to prove myself, another chance to show the boss that I deserve that promotion. Bring it. Do you know what I mean? Like right there, because we feel the way we think. So if you change that thought, you can start to change how you feel about yourself, about your situation, about what's happening. And that is the way through that. I mean, but if you're not aware, if you're not mindful and aware when you're doing it, then it's not going to help you to have all the tools in the world. I can teach people the greatest tools, but if you don't remember to use them in a moment, it's not going to take you very far. You can remember.
You talk a lot about intention. It's like setting the intention to change, to use those tools.
Yeah. There's lots of little tricks you can use to get there, but you have to get there. You can't. That's why I think so many people spend so much time trying to figure out why they feel the way they feel, because that's so much easier. You don't have to do any work. You just have to sit and about it, or your best friend, or have a drink, or whatever, or go to a therapist. And just people want to talk with me over and over about their past, and I don't let them. I'm like, tell me once, maybe two. I will often link something back so they can understand it better. That's happening now. I'll be like, wow, that's like your husband's talking to you like your dad used to. No wonder you freeze in those moments. Do you know what I mean? Like, just so they can have an explanation and be nicer to themselves. And then it's, what do you do? Like, you can't keep talking about it. You have to do something. But people often really like to talk about it because they don't really, and they keep saying, well, I'm confused. I don't know. And I'm like, you're not confused and you do know. You just don't want to do it.
Because they're looking for validation. You know,
No,
they
I
want to
think
tell their
it's that
story because
people-
they need somebody to side with them, you know.
But people side with them all the time and it doesn't help. People will sit, their best friend will sit with them every week and say, yeah, that really sucked. And then they'll keep telling the story over and over. It's not validation, I don't think. I mean, I think.
Well, do they feel heard then? Like maybe they feel heard?
Yeah, once, but not over and over. If you're doing this over and over,
ruminating pattern, right?
It's your pattern of thought. I think it's because people don't want to do the work.
Well,
I think it's why people aren't meditating every day. It's why they're not going to the gym. It's why they're not doing a lot of things they know to do, but don't do what they know. Because they don't prioritize it. It's so much easier to, binge watch something on Netflix and eat some Oreos. It is easier. And if you're feeling exhausted by your work or by your finances or by your relationship or whatever it is, your bandwidth goes to nothing. And the things, you need to do to feel healthier, to have a better bandwidth, you have to get past that critical juncture where these things actually start to build your bandwidth, your ability to handle things, and you start doing more and more. You have more energy to work out. You have more energy to go on walks. You have more energy to talk to your partner from a loving place. You have more energy to, look for a new job because the other one you hate. Like, it's just that, the shift is really hard.
It's that dirty work. You have to do the work. And it's not only the dirty word, it's a dirty work because it's you have to face yourself, right? And most people don't want to face themselves, right? It's hard because the more you face yourself, the more you realize, oh, it's me. I have to do something.
It's on me.
I have to take responsibility.
Yes. The victim culture is the problem. The end of last year, I did a couple podcasts about, like, that's the one thing you have to change is being a victim. And people don't even realize that they're doing it all the time. I do it a lot when I talk about boundaries. People will say, this person trampled my boundaries. And I'm like, I am so overhearing that phrase because no one can trample your boundaries because they're your responsibility, not other people's. So it's very nice though to go, oh, I tried to talk to my mom, nothing works. And now I can be resentful and angry. And this is where I clearly like to be. Otherwise I would change it. But they find it too difficult to, really say to their mom, like, if it's not a boundary to say what you like or what you want, please stop talking to me that way. If you got to stop, I don't like that. Please don't do that behavior anymore. That's not okay. It really upset me when you said that. All of those things are lovely, but they are not boundaries. A boundary is, you can't talk to me that way anymore. And if you continue, here is what I will do. So that's why the boundary is your responsibility and not the other person's, because it's not their job to hold your boundary. You're not even holding your boundary. Why do you think they should? So you have to hold it first. But that victim thing, I mean, when I say this, I got people like screaming with capital letters, that I'm ridiculous. And, all the keyboard warriors are out, yelling at me. It's because they don't want to hear it. They like being a victim. And I don't. So, yes. I was for years, I did it too. But you've got to shift out of that. If you're blaming anyone else for your lot in life, anything, I don't care what it is. If you're blaming the president or the economy or whoever, your mom or your partner, you're in a bad place because you're acting like a victim. And you have to get out of that. You've got to take ownership of your life. You just have to.
The big question I started asking myself, because, when I realized how important, I didn't realize the importance of boundaries until I came across your book.
Oh, good.
And I wish I had that book when I was in my teens.
Me too.
And it is difficult to face it. And I actually have to work at, reminding myself and say, how did you create this? Like, and I'll take that to the extreme, to a disease. Like, you have a disease. How did you create that? I don't know if you see this. I don't know if you see, I got a big book here called Messages from the Body. Mm-hmm. So it's a book this thick, and it's an expensive book. I got it for a gift. It's available only in the US. You can't even get it here in Canada. But it's very well researched, and it's all about the correlation between how your physical body responds to certain emotions. And obviously, if you're holding resentments, it's equate to cancer, right? So a lot of people who have cancer, where's your resentment? What's happening? And I don't say it to people, but I maybe in a loving way, I would say to people like what's your part? Like, that's another way of saying, how did you create this? What's your part? Can you see your part? Because I think one of the biggest problems is people do not see their part. They don't see how they created this problem and the disease. They go, what? I'm responsible? This is happening to me. And you want to tell me that I'm responsible for this? It's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And it does take a lot of deep work and awareness and a lot of mindfulness of what's happening and how things have happened, right?
I think in relationships, it's important. Like, I don't want to speak to the medical because that's not my lane, but in relationships and emotions, it's really important to understand that you co-create every relationship. So you've co-created whatever this is. You haven't created on your own. It's not full, but you're responsible for your side of the street of what you've created. So if you and your mom are in a very negative relationship where there's a lot of criticalness and you bite your tongue and then you're mad at her, you're resentful all the time, that you understand that you're part of that. It's not your mom's fault. It's not your fault. It's a co-creation of the two of you. No one's to blame. No one's to yell at, but that's the explanation. So what can you do now to shift out of that? That's the question. What can you do now on your side of the street to shift out of what you're co-creating? So create something yourself that feels different, that you take ownership of. And that is hopefully having a boundary and sticking to it, because that's what you can do.
Yeah. And it's, when you're looking at, like you say, it's like whose fault is, well, it's not fault. I look at it responsibility. It's your responsibility. Right. It's not your fault, but you're acting this way because of human conditioning. We explained earlier how, this is the way the mind works, and being aware of that, will help you get out of it. So
absolutely,
the first line of defense is awareness.
Yes.
So I have a few red flags here. So just if you want to add to them, or tell me if you agree. So these are conditions, because I say when we are not aware. So the key word here is when, because that's a condition, right? So when we are at these following conditions, that's our cue that, something is off. So when we give power and control to the opinion of others, right? Number two is when the opinion of others is defining our lives and ultimately our identity. When our self-worth is a measure of keeping score. You talk about that a lot, and that's like a huge insight that comes into play about the reptilian brain. Like we need to win, we need to be better, we need to have the upper hand, or all that stuff, and it's a recipe for disaster. And we do it all the time, like without even noticing it, right? So again, if you're finding yourself that you're trying to keep score against anybody, not just partnership, is your cue, right? When we are seeking the approval of others, when we wish to fulfill the opinion others have of us, even though it doesn't feel right. Time for glasses. Even though it doesn't feel right, when we do not have the freedom to walk into a room and not care what other people think, when we allow years of worth wash away in seconds. This is like an example of this would be, you work all your life and you have this beautiful home, it's paid off, and you have everything that you need in it, right? And then you come across somebody who has a home twice as big as yours and a lot more toys, and then you say, like, geez, I'm not worthy. They're saying this person is so much more accomplished than I am, right? So those years of worth, what you worked for, go in seconds. They like just disappear in seconds, right? From that one perspective, right? So that's one thing to really be aware of. And then when we don't see how little people really care about our status or appearance, so if we have, like, let's say you have pointy ears, and Spock, if he's listening, sorry, no offense. So, you're conscious of a certain part of your body. You say, like, oh, my ears are pointy. And you're like, you carry that for years everywhere you go. And every time you meet somebody new, that feeling comes up again. And people get over it just like that. They say, oh, that person has pointy ears. Boom, they're done. Seconds later, they're done. And you're dragging it on for years. Who knows how many years,
Right.
until your pointy ears get all wrinkly. Then you go, I wish I had pointy ears rather than my wrinkly ears. You start to not care as much, as you get older, right? And then we have, when we measure our self-worth against something that isn't real, and it's really interesting how much value we put on people that are good at pretending, but we don't call it pretending. We call it acting, right?
Okay.
We put this, oh, wow, they're so good. And I say, like, how much would you value your partner based on their ability to pretend to be someone other than the person you thought they were? You would call that betrayal. But if you put them in an acting scene, like, wow, they're fabulous. Like they have a lot of worth, right? If you take Tom Cruise, for example, and he lost everything, but he was still Tom Cruise, any woman would value him, men too. That's Tom Cruise. Like he's a great actor. Like we put people that are good at just pretending, like, so much value on things that are not real. And that's with social media too. We go on Instagram and we say, oh, wow, look at that. I wish, right? So that's another red flag. And lastly, when we find ourselves, and this is a big one for me, when we find ourselves behaving inauthentically. And authenticity, from a practical and a spiritual perspective, it's when you're trying to find who you are, is the more you resonate with your authentic nature, the more you resonate with who you really are, right? Like being yourself, right?
Sure.
And I have an example of losing your authenticity. And maybe if you want to offer any other examples. So you're seen as a good little girl growing up because you were quiet and did what you were told. One day you expressed your adventurous nature, but after everyone around you questioned your actions and your behavior, you felt a sense of shame for being someone other than the person everyone else expected you to be. So we succeed in meeting someone's approval and feel good about it because we feel validated and worthy. But here we confuse feeling safe with feeling good, and then feeling good with being happy. But in that case, it's just a matter of time before you start to question your happiness. And I have a simple happiness formula, which goes like this. Happiness equals authenticity, and vice versa, because you have to see it from two different perspectives. So the simple question to ask yourself, am I happy? And if you're not happy, you ask yourself, am I being authentic? Or an easier question might be, am I being honest with myself in any given situation? And the authenticity red flag is, in the process of your questioning, you come across an element of fear. Then chances are you are not being authentic, because happiness and fear cannot share the same space. What do you think of that?
What you said a lot. I'm not sure what I'm commenting on.
Well, happiness and fear, like.
Well, I don't say I mean, I don't love the word happy. I say love and fear. I mean, it's from A Course in Miracles, and I would say in the love-based emotions, I would feel joy and happiness and all those things. And from other spiritual teachings, what I believe is that love and fear can't occupy the same space, which is also true in your brain. Your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex can't be online at the same time.
Right.
The fear part and the logic part. So I'm not sure what's going. So, I believe in love over fear. I mean, I think you have to think of choosing those emotions over choosing fear-based ones, worry and resentment and all that.
Right. Yeah. And you said it perfectly with how just even the physical brain, you can't be happy or in love if you're in fear.
Right.
And again, it's like, to me, it's like a red flag. Okay, is there fear around here? Like, then for me, again, it comes down to being authentic. Are you being true to yourself? Are you being yourself,
Mhm.
or are you being somebody else for the sake of, in this case, for the sake of approval? And I have some food for thoughts here. So most people have very little interest in your achievements or how well you perform unless what you have is of interest to them. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, give me an example. What do you mean?
Okay, I have an example right here. So Bel's extraordinary musical talents were not appreciated at the transit station because he was seen as some guy trying to make a buck. The person who stopped to acknowledge him did so because she recognized him the night before when he played at the Library of Congress. So what did this person who stopped have to gain? They may have been thinking, wow, I paid $100 for a standard seat to see this guy play the other night. Now I get to listen to him up close for free. Even if I throw in $20 in the pot, which you did, which will look good amongst all that pocket change, I'm still getting a good deal here. Hooray for me. I did good. Wait till I tell my friends, right?
Mhm.
So I think when we get caught up in worrying about the opinion of others, there's an element that people don't really care unless there's something that is of interest to them. Like I was
Oh,
saying before, it's just like in a flash, it's like, oh, you got a big note. Oh, you can play the violin. Oh, good for you.
mhm.
Like there's no. But if they say, wait a minute, that's Joshua Bell. That's somebody famous. Oh, really? Let me go. Well, I can be late
Uh-huh.
for work. It's okay. So there's
Right.
this whole different change in mentality because there's something in it for you, right?
Could be. Yeah.
When I reached out to you, I was thinking about like kids and teenagers in general. Like they take opinion of others so much to heart.
Yeah.
As you get older, you kind of start brushing off because you're probably exhausted of hearing it.
Sure. You're over
So and they affects their whole life and their stress, and then they just take on so much, upon themselves, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about?
Well, we have to end. I know. I mean, that's a whole hour
Yeah, I
conversation.
know
I
they
mean,
all
I
are.
would say, Jonathan Haidt wrote beautifully about it in The Anxious Generation, which, I would just refer people to that book. It's incredible. I think anybody with teenagers or young kids should read it. Or even with kids like in college, you should really read that book because it really covers how different it is for kids and how different how anxious they are about so many things because of the way the world is. And it gives some protective factors and things like that, which are amazing. But yeah, I can't, jump in there too much
I
right now because
appreciate
it'll
that.
just it's such a long, it's its own show, it's a big thing.
And that's what I felt when I saw that email. Know your worth. I said, this is huge. And as I said before, the experiment wasn't even about worth.
No. Right.
It
Well,
was about
good.
people's reaction to
Yeah,
popularity.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and it's really detrimental. And you said here the tragedy. Like you pointed out the tragedy of letting other people dictate your worth.
Mhm.
And I think that's where the real tragedy is.
Yeah.
When we start to let other people tell us who we are, and we invest so much time and energy, even years of our lives
Sure.
hung up on what other people expect you to
Yeah.
be, you know?
I
So
agree.
it's a sad truth, but there is hope, right?
Yeah.
You know,
That's what
and
you offer. I offer. We offer hope.
yeah, and a lot of, like you say, teenagers should be reading. I think the Boundaries book is, oh my God, Abby,
Great.
it's such a golden tool, and
Thank you.
I love to study. I'm studying that book. Like I like to
That's good.
break it down and study it and really look at
That's
those.
good. I love it.
boundaries.
Which is so nice, and have questions for you and have you go deeper. And there's a lot of therapists who write to me who use the book, and healers and all kinds of different people. I have one shaman who wrote to me, which I was like very excited. I was like, yes,
That's
that
great.
the whole point is to disseminate the information and to have, like, that's the point. Do you know what I mean? And to have more people really, I think boundaries are the way you get to self-worth. I think boundaries are the way you get to healing. I think boundaries are the way you create close, intimate relationships. I think boundaries are the answer. I say it to everything. Everything someone would say to me, they'd ask, I want to be happier, boundaries. I want to be more peaceful, boundaries. I want to have a closer relationship, boundaries. Like everything they would ask, I was like, oh, boundaries. And that's when I read the book. I thought, oh my gosh, this is just everything I taught. I never mindfulness and boundaries are like the only things I was talking about constantly. And I thought, well, there's plenty of books on mindfulness, but here's something I can say on boundaries that might help you move it forward. So I love that you're paying it forward to people and helping them, and you always think of the impact on generations to come. Hopefully that's my real goal, right?
Absolutely. That,
Yeah.
that information that you're putting out so passionately, like, I think you can have just one book on your shelf in boundaries, because I 100% agree with you. It
That's
incorporates so much of everything else.
Right.
Because when you do have those boundaries, you start to resonate with yourself. And now we go back to the authenticity. And when you're being authentic, like you don't need anything else.
Right.
You can walk anywhere with confidence. You can do stuff with confidence. You'll start attracting all these other different positive things that resonate with you, your own self, because it's authentic, right? So, I mean,
I think as a closing word, I'll say, I think sometimes people have a hard time connecting to authentic, what it even means. And what I tell people is it's alignment. It's when you are making a decision, you're being authentic, because when you're making a decision, you feel energized, you feel peaceful, you feel happy, you feel inspired, right? As opposed to a fear-based reaction. That's when again, all those nice feelings are when you're feeling authentic. It's because you're aligned. And I say kind of aligned with the universe, aligned with your higher self, aligned with God, if that's what you like, however you want to think of it, doesn't matter to me. And then when we're out of alignment, out of authenticity, we're making choices from fear-based places. We're worried that, well, what if I'm scared that we feel enervated, not energized. We feel overwhelmed. We feel confused. We feel sad. We feel, resentful. That's how you know. You really know by how you feel. And so I think for a lot of people, the word authentic escapes them a little bit. Like, does it mean I'm being honest? Like they don't really, not sure, but when I explain it in a feeling way, I find that people can really connect to it. Like sometimes it's, quote unquote, following your gut. And it's the same thing as when you're in alignment. That's when everything follows up. So you just have to listen for it. You have to see how you feel. That's how I do it. It's that simple. Am I having a fear-based emotion or a love-based emotion? Keep it simple, stupid, as we say in the 12 steps. Like that's what I do. And that's how I know that, I should step back from this decision right now, or this conversation, or this whatever situation, because I'm getting really bad. These feelings I'm having are really fear-based. I get asked a lot. I think one of my number one videos on like social media is, how do you know if you really love someone? That's the big question people ask. How do I know if I really love this person? And I say to them, it's because all you're feeling are love-based emotions, not fear-based ones. You're not with them because, oh, well, I've already put in so much time. I'm afraid to start over. I'm worried that they're going to find someone else when they leave me and they're going to be happier. I'm afraid that, I don't think you can ever find, you always have to settle. The language is all fear-based. I don't want to be alone. I'm afraid about being alone. It's all fear-based. And that's when you're not in love with that person. That's not love, because no relationship is made better by fear. You can't have a love relationship based on fear. Can't have it. So you can have a relationship, but it's not a love-based one. So that's how you know. And that video has gotten more hits and more downloads and more whatever than anything I've ever done, which is so funny, because I just sort of talk about that and people resonate with it. They get it. It's like, and again, that's your authentic self. Where are you coming from? Are you coming from love or fear? So to me, that's always the place to put it, really distill it down.
So simple and so helpful. And
Good.
I think you can just remember that. And that's just probably caps everything we just talked about.
There you go. So that's a good way to end, right? There you go.